Good afternoon, channel partners. This is Hayden Lauder, one of your regional sales managers here at Questtec Solutions. And today we're going to be bringing awareness to bridal opportunities. So bridal opportunities within chemical plants, refineries. We can even touch on some in the midstream, upstream space with separator OEMs. And then touching on how to land them, things to be aware of when working these jobs and when quoting and bidding these jobs against the competition. So without further ado, we'll get going. I got a couple of visuals here to help aid me, but for the most part, just listen along and hopefully we can all learn something and move forward and start selling more bridles and upselling and making growing both of our businesses. So one of the big things that really adds value to the end user that Questtec and yourselves are providing is there's a need out there for reduced unions, reduced threading. Why? That's the nuisance leak points that most of these downstream customers are dealing with. So due to that fact, they want to go all welded and flange connections. With that, we reduce the need for in-field welding and post-weld heat treatment in field when we provide the entire turnkey solution, sight glass and bridle. So one of the components I want to touch on, and this is ways to identify larger bridal opportunities when it may initially appear as just a small sight glass RFQ. You may have oftentimes seen RFQs come in where it's, for tag 31 Bravo and 31 Alpha. And that sometimes can be a good cue in to tell you, hey, these two sight glasses may be mounted to something other than just the vessel. And that's always a good question to ask. If you didn't get to walk down the opportunity in field and it's just being turned into you over an ISA data sheet or sent via email, is posing the question, hey, is this opportunity for the sight glass, are you also having bridal work done? Or are you outsourcing that? Is that something that y'all plan on doing in-house? And if they are doing it in-house, that's a great time to bring up, well, if you are, and if you're requiring post-weld heat treat and this is becoming all welded, well, you're going to have to post-weld heat treat this in field potentially if there's any welding to the bridle assembly. And you can begin to go down this road of asking enough questions where they begin to realize, well, shoot, in-field welding costs a lot of money. In-field post-weld heat treat costs a lot of money. Let alone they got to take the time and man hours to build and fabricate the bridle themselves, when on the other end of the spectrum, this can all be provided turnkey from the same vendor providing them their sight glass. So, and I'm not just blowing smoke here. This has been something Jordan Bunting has been doing for years, had loads of success in many accounts. And we have begun to do in quite a few of our accounts in my territories as well. So with that said, identifying when there is a bridal opportunity. Again, it can never hurt to ask. You're quoting sight glass, or you're walking down infield walk downs and you see bridal columns with sight glass and you're talking through the sight glass. Always make the attempt to see if the bridal column is something that they will be overhauling as well. Once you've locked that down or you become aware of a bridal opportunity, there's a lot of nuance that is involved into actually making sure that job one is done right, and two, that they understand the difference between our quote and the competitor's quote. We actually just had an opportunity at Chevron, me and one of my reps, where we quoted against Jurgensen, and it was a vastly different quote at the end of the day that the end user they don't know the difference. All they saw was a $20,000 cheaper price tag from Jurgensen than what we were offering. Well, we were able to make them aware, and this is a good thing. Ideally, you can get this done before the quoting stage, and you can make sure that they understand that we're going to be adhering to these pipe specs. And let me dive into that a little bit. So with these refineries and chemical plants, every unit typically has a piping spec that they're adhering to. And these piping specs cover anything from vent and drain valves, whether they're gate valves, the trims, the pipe size, the schedule thickness on both nipples, on pipes. They have various different post-weld heat treatment requirements, NACE requirements. All these different requirements get listed off in these pipe specs that sight glass sometimes not has to adhere to, but typically always the bridle itself that the sight glass is strapped to will need to adhere to. So with that said, I mean, those requirements come to things like socket connections at the branches. What types of flange class and ratings are they requiring? The list goes on and on. So with that said, what happened with Jurgensen was why they were $20,000 cheaper is the initial RFQ was for like 5 sight glasses. Well, Jurgensen quoted these 5 sight glasses. We were able to work our ways into the opportunity, and we came in and quoted and asked additional questions and asked if there was a main bridle column, which we found out yes there was. So we actually quoted the entire bridle column with Jordan Bunting's assistance and his mass expertise working at Chevron. At various other Chevron locations around the country, he was pretty familiar with their branch table requirements. So we were able to quote something that we knew was going to be pretty close to what their piping spec was, even though we didn't have it. They had some considerations listed out that they had called out in email, but at the time they were asking for a quick quote. So we had just gotten out what we could with the best assumptions of what these piping specs would be. Now, the reason why this became a problem was Jurgensen's quote was $20,000 cheaper. What Jurgensen had done, and what you'll see happen to you with competitors in field, is they went out and quoted the cheapest way to possibly build this bridle possible. So the problem with that, and something you need to make the customer aware of when they see these much cheaper price tags, whenever something seems too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. So what happened here was Jurgensen went out of their way to quote it because they knew they were bidding against us. So once we quoted the entire bridle, they had been given an opportunity, quoted the whole thing, and they quoted, and they knew they were quoting against us. So they disregarded any pipe spec adherence and basically just quoted the cheapest way to build an assembly with the visible range and the centers that had been spelled out in the email. And what we were able to do was bring this to the end user's attention and get them to understand that, look, when you get these quotes, these lowball quotes, what's going to happen is you're going to get to the approval drawing phase. Say you award the job to Jurgensen. You're just going to get to the approval drawing phase. They're going to send something in. And as soon as you match this to your pipe specs, you're going to realize, whoa, none of this matches. We can't install this in our plant. And so what it's either going to do 2 things. One, bog down the entire process because immediately they're going to have to go back, re-quote it, revise POs, new approval drawings, and everything's getting setbacks. Everything is getting set back weeks now at this point, or they're going to actually go through with approving this, and then it's going to get in field, and they're going to realize they can't install it because it doesn't adhere to pipe specs. So I'm stressing this really hard right now, but pipe specs, those are huge. So again, big things to pay attention to. Piping specs. Another thing I want to touch on is NDEs, which Questtec holds over 40 different weld procedures. So along with piping specs, NDEs, pipe specs, weld procedures, WPS, PQRs, these things are all significant at the end user level. And these are things our inside team is trained to deal with. We know how to ask for them and work with you guys to help you extract the information we need from the end user to quote these jobs. But again, I'm talking jobs going from $5,000 to $50,000, $60,000 jobs when we move from just quoting 2 or 3 sight glasses to getting an entire bridle column with potentially a guided wave. So again, the objective here is always to be upselling, always pushing to tack on as much possible. Other things that you can tout in field is, hey, Questtec is an ASME coded shop. We can build things at 31.1. We build things at 31.3. We provide the data books. We have our S stamp, our U stamp, and our R stamp. We have post-weld heat treatment capabilities in-house. We have third-party vendors that we can go to for very, very large bridle assemblies. But at the end of the day, what Questtec is able to offer that most of our competitors aren't is the engineering expertise that goes into this. We're making the job easier and less micromanage from the end user perspective because we can take on all the scope of engineering, design, adherence to their pipe specs, and providing a full turnkey package. So again, good buzzwords, but seriously, a full turnkey package that minimizes cost in field, whether that be on post-weld heat treatment, in-field welding, the man hours, having to lock down a separate vendor for bridle work. Questtec can take on the entire scope. Here's just another example that I wanted to throw in here to give you another idea. All these branch connections here that you can see T's, there's various different flanges. These can all be in adherence with various pipe specs, and it can get a lot more detailed than it appears on the surface. And then there can come to other, and this is a place where you can begin to source in other vendors on your line sheet, electric level switches, instrumentation, that can all be tied in with this bridle work and free issued to Questtec. So there's ways to compile and make these sales larger and incorporate other manufacturers that you guys represent. And lastly, I just want to really touch on attention to detail. The biggest thing we've talked about, I mean, and I didn't even discuss, there's coating specs, piping specs, NDE requirements, welding procedures, NACE, data book packages required. I mean, there's so much that can go into this. And again, our inside team is trained and knows the questions to ask to help facilitate you guys getting everything. If you know of a big bridal opportunity coming up, please get with one of your regionals, whether it's Ryan Sauer, myself, Hayden, or Jordan Bunting, and we can begin to assist and help you guys move forward to lock down these jobs and provide all the ammunition you guys need to win the sale. So with that said, I appreciate y'all's time and look forward to talking to you guys again next time.